Some of you asked for it, so I got it, ran it, and here's a review. What's happening, guys? Hope your day is going well. Today we're going to review Centurion Labz TURKOVAR. There it is. We're going to go over the ingredients so you know what you're putting in your body, and we'll go over the effects on this, my personal effects on this bad boy. We'll talk about it a little bit. If you're new to the channel, you like stuff like that, hit the subscribe button. Love to have you along for the ride. So we're going to jump right into this, and we'll talk about dosing. We'll talk about the ingredients. But let's put the label up first so you guys can see what's in this thing. We got a serving size, 4 capsules, 30 servings. We got some ajuga here at 1,000 milligrams, which is 10% terkesterone, which is going to be 100 milligrams of terkesterone. We got ashwagandha root here at 600 milligrams in 4 caps. And then we have marl root, which is going to have 20 hydroxy ecdysterone, and that's going to contain 300 milligrams of ecdysterone. And then we have epicatogen at 200 milligrams and bioprenin at 10 milligrams. So we're going to go ahead and talk about the ingredients real quick and get into this, dive into this. We're going to talk about the ashwagandha, the epicatogen, and the bioprenin, and then we'll end it with the terkesterone and ecdysterone because they're pretty much the same thing. They're ecdysteroids. So we're going to talk about the ashwagandha here first. I did do a short on that. If you want more information on it, I'll put the card up above. But this has withanolides in it, which helps control cortisol levels. So if you control cortisol levels and your cortisol is all out of whack, there's a potential for hormonal regulation, weight loss, and just all around health wise there. So this does lower cortisol levels for stressors in life. It is an adaptogen, just like ecdysteroids are adaptogens. Terkesterone, ecdysterone are considered adaptogens as well, and they help you adapt better to all the stressors in life. Then we have epicatogen. So epicatogen has been shown in some rodent studies and actually a few studies with the elderly to actually lower myostatin, which in turn raises follistatin. These are two mechanisms in the body that help us maintain and also put on muscle. So if your myostatin gets too high, then you can have a catabolic effect in the body to where you're not building and maintaining muscle. So this has been shown in those few studies to actually lower myostatin, which then in turn increases follistatin. So it's kind of like a pendulum effect. If one raises, the other lowers. If one lowers, the other raises. And we want that balance at all times for muscle gains. This also has the ability to help with some anti-inflammatory effects, and it does this by means of downregulating INOS within the body. So we have ENOS, NNOS, and INOS. When we talk about vasodilation and pumps, we're always talking about elevating ENOS. So this does elevate ENOS and it does lower INOS. And the way it produces nitric oxide is via the inhibiting NADPH oxidase within the body. And then in turn, what this does is it releases endothelial nitric oxide and EDHF, which is endothelial derived hyperpolarizing factor. And those two mechanisms help with vasodilation in the body for blood flow. Then we have bioprenin here at 10 milligrams. So bioprenin, what it does, it has some effects on the way the liver processes certain things within the body. So it does manipulate liver enzymes for digestion and the idea of processing things that we digest that we need for functionality on a cellular level within the body. And then this also slows down the removal of waste out of the small intestines. That way ingredients will sit in there and be absorbed better rather than things being rapidly moved out of the small intestines out the back end. So it's a decent ingredient for stuff like this. If you're going to use estrogen, that would be more for an amino acid complex, although it does have some benefits with the gut and inflammation and stuff like that. But bioprenin is perfectly fine for a product like this. So now we get into the ecdysteroids. We have ajuga, which is terkesterone, and then we have ecdysterones in this thing, which are basically both ecdysteroids. And these are androgens to insects. They help with reproduction, they help with molting. And the way these work, and I know on the internet you're going to find a lot of information that these work on the estrogen beta receptors within the body to actually promote all these effects within the body. But I couldn't find any information as far as them reacting on the estrogen beta receptors. But this does activate through in vitro and rodent studies. This does activate G protein coupled receptors within the body. And once you actually activate those receptors, you have signaling effects that happen all through the body there. And the two biggest mechanisms that are initiated once G protein coupled receptors are activated are PI3K and AKT within the body. And these two actually have a downstream effect. Once they're activated, they activate a lot of molecules downstream after that activation happens. And then you get a slew of things that happen in the body. You get insulin regulation because PI3K actually acts like insulin in the body and helps with the regulation of glucose within the body. So you're going to have that type of a function. This also has activation on protein synthesis that's not really fully understood, but what it does is it rapidly increases calcium within the cells, which then actually activates muscle protein synthesis. And that's not from PI3K alone, but that's also when AKT is activated within the body. So these two activations, all starting with G protein coupled receptors being activated, help with muscle protein synthesis, they help with nitrogen retention, and they help with insulin regulation. There have been some studies also that the activation of these also helps with some anti-inflammatory effects and the increase of adiopectin levels within the body to help control weight loss. So my experience on TURKOVAR by Centurion Labz. So I had to stop taking this after 2.5 weeks, and I was kind of bummed. And the reason why is because it started to mess with my blood glucose. So for those that don't know, I'm a type 1 diabetic. And as this started to build up in my system, I'll talk about how I took it and how you should be taking turkesterone and ecdysterone from my understanding, my viewpoint, my personal opinion, because of what I've read online and the anecdotal effects by individuals that actually posted on how they took things. We'll get into all that. But being a type 1 diabetic, I actually know how I'm supposed to regulate my blood sugars with my insulin doses throughout the day. And it became erratic for me. Not that it's a bad thing. So if you are a normie and you're not a type 1 diabetic, then you won't have this experience. But for me, I had my sugars dropping at times, giving myself normal dosages, and it just left me wonky. I am running around, I'm driving all day, and it just put me in a situation to where it just became kind of dangerous in a way as far as not being able to regulate my blood glucose. I either had to leave it super high and hope that, they would regulate and drop a little bit for myself, or I'd have to give myself a shot and carry some glucose around with me, or some dextrose. Dextrose is basically glucose, to actually bring them up and then sit to the side of the road for 20-30 minutes for it to happen. So that's the only reason why I stopped this. As far as the effects on this thing, I want to tell you guys right now, I felt fuller. So the 2.5 weeks, as it built from that first week, I started to feel like I was swole all day long. And it wasn't just a feeling, because at the 2.5 week mark, I took off my shirt and looked in the mirror, and that was not just a feeling going on. I looked bigger. I looked thicker. So this did have an effect on the way my body composition was looking, and I was thinner. As far as I was leaner, I felt leaner. I wasn't holding on to as much water. My abs were popping out a little bit more. So this had some profound effects. I'll tell you right now, I've taken Turk before, I've taken ecdysterone before, I've taken epicatechin before, and I've never had those kind of like drastic changes within my physique so rapidly. And I know that the ingredients in here are pure. So I know they did a good job on actually dosing quality ingredients in this thing, because I don't think it would have hit that hard on my insulin, and I don't think it would have hit that hard as far as seeing some type of recomping noticeable effects within the mirror. So talking about dosing here, turkesterone is supposed to have a half-life of 4 to 5 hours. Ecdysterone is supposed to have a half-life of 8 to 9 hours. So when you're dealing with those two ingredients, you kind of have to dose it accordingly, because of knowing that turkesterone has that half-life of 4 to 5 hours, or the information that it possibly does, because there's not a whole lot of studies out there. I'm just being real with you guys, but this is the information I can gather from anecdotal experiences, from people leaving comments, through the studies that I've read, kind of coming to conclusions. You want to dose this 4 times a day. It's 4 pills. So you want to space the pills out 4 to 5 hours. So pretty much you would just take a pill with a meal. It's going to help with the digestion. That's exactly what I did. So I hope the review helps. I thought it was a really good product. I thought they really did a good job. So I give it up again to Centurion Labz with their TURKOVAR. I got to get going back to work. We'll see you next time on the channel.